Monster City Madhouse, a year-round online store full of Halloween and classic horror shirts, with an emphasis on the vintage look. Use code SAVE10 for 10% off your order. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Free shipping and financing's available. Welcome back to Southern Ghost Stories, where we explore the haunted history, folklore, and darkest legends in the United States. I'm your host, the American historian, Alan Sircy. As I mentioned in the last show, I'm going to be in Louisville, Kentucky for the big Louisville HorrorCon this weekend. Lots of celebrities will be on hand: Jack Osbourne, Linda Blair, Jamie Kennedy, Ed Begley Jr., many, many more. Come out and see us at the Kentucky Expo Center. We'll be there Saturday and Sunday, and I'll be there signing books and telling ghost stories. So, since I'm going to be in Louisville, why not do a show about the Derby City? I did one on Tuesday. Let's do another one. Today, we are going to one of the grandest and most haunted hotels in America, the Seelbach Hotel. It's a place filled with elegance, wealth, gangsters, hidden tunnels, tragedy, and one restless spirit that still reportedly wanders the halls nearly 90 years after a death. So the Seelbach is not just another old hotel with a ghost story attached to it. This place feels alive with history. Presidents stayed there. Mobsters drank there. F. Scott Fitzgerald reportedly found the inspiration for The Great Gatsby there. And somewhere deep inside those marble hallways and hidden service corridors, many believe a young woman known as the Lady in Blue still lingers. But before we get to those hauntings, we need to understand the story of the hotel itself, because the Seelbach was born from ambition, struggle, and eventually death. In 1869, a 17-year-old Bavarian immigrant named Louis Seelbach arrived in America with his brother. Like many immigrants of the era, they came looking for opportunity. So Louis's brother moved to Lexington to work in the hotel business, but Louis, he stayed in Louisville, and he quickly found work at the famous Galt House Hotel as a cook's helper. So we talked about the Galt House just a few days ago. So Louis earned only $5 a week, but he worked relentlessly. He saved his money while learning every aspect of the hotel industry. After 5 years, Louis had saved enough money to open a saloon in Louisville's tobacco district. It wasn't glamorous at first, but Louis, he understood people. He adapted his business by serving lunch to warehouse workers nearby, and before long, his saloon became wildly successful. Eventually, he moved operations to a better location on 6th and Main, and he opened the Seelbach Bar and Grill. Soon after, he began renting rooms upstairs, creating the first version of the Seelbach Hotel. Well, business exploded. Louis and his brother Otto dreamed of building something Louisville had never seen before. A luxurious European-style hotel that could rival the finest establishments in New York or Chicago. Most people thought they were out of their minds. The location they chose was considered too far from downtown Louisville, and many investors believed no one would travel that far to stay in a hotel. Even Louisville's mayor reportedly warned Louis his idea was going to fail. But the Seelbach brothers, they ignored the criticism. They pushed forward. Construction began in 1903, and in May of 1905, just before the Kentucky Derby, the Seelbach Hotel officially opened its doors. Louisville had never seen anything like it. Thousands of people flooded into the hotel during opening day. Guests marveled at the Italian marble lobby, the grand staircases, imported Turkish rugs, enormous murals, and the lavish dining rooms. The crowds became so overwhelmed that police officers had to clear the building after several women fainted from the heat and congestion. People even stole tablecloths and bed sheets just to keep souvenirs from the grand opening. Louisville newspapers declared the Seelbach the finest hotel in all of the South. And honestly, they weren't exaggerating. The Seelbach quickly became the social center of Louisville. Politicians, businessmen, celebrities, wealthy travelers all passed through the doors. But from the very beginning, strange incidents seemed to follow the hotel. Only months after opening, a man suffered a horrific skull fracture in a freak elevator accident. Another guest escaped from an insane asylum in Chicago and was later discovered hiding inside the hotel. Then the hotel's manager, R.W. Papendek, was shot and killed while trying to stop a burglar. It was almost as though the building itself attracted chaos. In 1907, the hotel expanded to 500 rooms and added the famous Rathskeller in the basement. The Rathskeller became one of the most beautiful rooms in the country, decorated with thousands of people of rockwood pottery tile and elaborate painted ceilings featuring zodiac signs. Even today, it remains one of the only surviving rooms of its kind in the whole world. But by the 1920s, another element had entered the Seelbach's history: organized crime. During Prohibition, Louisville sat in a prime location between northern cities and the moonshine operations of Appalachia. Gangsters regularly traveled through Kentucky, transporting illegal alcohol, and one of the most famous visitors was Al Capone himself. Capone reportedly stayed at the Seelbach often while traveling between Chicago and Tennessee, and then on his way to Florida. According to hotel legend, he frequently played cards in what is now called the Oak Room. Because he was paranoid about police and betrayal, Capone supposedly had a mirror installed so he could watch both the room and the cards of the players around him. Go figure, he was cheating. The Seelbach allegedly catered to Capone's paranoia. Hidden mechanisms were built into the room so that lookouts could trigger spring-loaded doors if police entered the building. Once those doors slammed shut, Capone knew it was time to disappear. And according to local legend, he had plenty of ways to do just that. The Seelbach reportedly contained hidden passageways and underground tunnels beneath the building. One tunnel allegedly led to a nearby structure, while another stretched toward the riverfront or Churchill Downs. These passageways supposedly allowed mobsters and bootleggers to flee unseen whenever authorities showed up. And the Rathskeller itself became infamous during Prohibition. Gambling, drinking, and violence became common. Police were often called to break up fights or respond to gunfire. In 1928, during Derby Week, armed robbers stormed a poker game inside the hotel and stole $20,000 before vanishing into the night. Nobody was ever convicted. The Seelbach had become a place where wealth and danger existed side by side. And somewhere in the middle of all that glamour and corruption, a tragedy occurred that would define the hotel forever. Her name, at least the one most people knew, was Patricia Wilson. Today she's remembered simply as the Lady in Blue. There are several versions of her story, and over the decades the details have blurred into legend. Some claim she was a newlywed who caught her husband cheating and leapt to her death in despair. Others say she came to reconcile with her ex-husband, only to discover he'd been killed outside the hotel in a car crash. Another rumor claimed she'd actually been murdered and thrown down the elevator shaft. But the most widely accepted version is rooted in a real death that occurred at the Seelbach in 1936. Patricia Wilson, it wasn't her real name. She'd been born Pearl May Elliott in Oklahoma. After losing her mother at a young age, she was separated from her siblings and raised in foster care. Later in life, she married young, but the relationship collapsed. She eventually moved to Louisville and, according to reports, began working as a lady of the night under the name Patricia Wilson. On November 6, 1936, hotel employee James Embry approached the service elevator while delivering linens. He noticed debris scattered around the elevator car, which immediately struck him as unusual. When he looked closer, he saw a hand protruding from the shaft. Terrified, he opened the service door and discovered Patricia's body lying atop the elevator car. Her legs were shattered. Her skull was fractured. She wore an orchid-colored dress and white high heels. The coroner determined she had fallen sometime during the early morning hours, but nobody could say for certain how she ended up in the elevator shaft. Was she intoxicated? Did she accidentally step in an open elevator shaft? Was it suicide? Or had someone pushed her? Those questions only intensified after Patricia's family filed lawsuits against both the hotel and former Brigadier General Henry Denhart, a controversial politician who was already accused of murdering his fiancée. Rumors spread that Denhart had been with Patricia the night she died, but he denied knowing her. Then, before his own murder trial could begin, Denhart himself was gunned down by his fiancée's brother. And with that, the mystery surrounding Patricia Wilson just never solved. Well, almost immediately after her death, stories began circulating about strange encounters at the Seelbach. Guests reported seeing a dark-haired woman in blue wandering the hallways near the elevators before suddenly disappearing. Housekeepers claimed they heard crying in the empty corridors late at night. Some guests reported waking up to see a woman standing silently at the foot of the bed before vanishing into thin air. Elevators reportedly open on their own. Buttons illuminate without being pressed. And some guests claim they've seen a woman reflected in elevator mirrors when no one else was present. Most sightings center around the 8th floor in the old service elevator where Patricia died. Hotel employees have their own stories too, and many of them are difficult to explain away. One of the strangest encounters reportedly occurred in 1987. Early one Sunday morning, a chef was preparing food for brunch on the mezzanine level when he noticed a woman with long brown hair wearing a blue dress step onto one of the elevators. At first, nothing seemed unusual about it, but then he realized something unsettling. The elevator doors had never opened. The woman had simply appeared inside the elevator as if she had walked through solid steel. The chef immediately alerted a nearby security guard about what he had seen. Only minutes later, a housekeeper working on the 8th floor reported seeing the exact same woman. According to her, the woman in blue walked directly through the elevator door before disappearing completely. And stories like that are one reason the legend of the Lady in Blue has survived for decades. But according to hotel staff, Patricia's spirit doesn't limit itself to the elevators. She's also been spotted in the Oak Room, the same room once frequented by Al Capone during Prohibition. One hotel employee recalled setting up for a Sunday brunch early one morning when a young woman in a blue dress approached and softly said, "Hello, you're doing a great job." The employee reportedly smiled and thanked her, but within seconds, the woman vanished right in front of him. Most sightings and strange experiences continue to center around the hotel's 8th floor, where Patricia Wilson is believed to have died in 1936. Employees and guests alike have reported smelling perfume in empty hallways with no source nearby. Others claim to hear footsteps pacing the corridor late at night, despite no one being present. TVs reportedly turn themselves on in guest rooms during the middle of the night, and some hotel workers say they've heard someone whisper their names while walking the halls alone. Housekeepers have experienced some of the eeriest encounters. Several have claimed to see the reflection of a woman standing behind them in mirrors while cleaning empty rooms. But when they turn around and greet the supposed guest, nobody's there. And guests frequently describe sudden cold spots on the 8th floor. Some report entire sections of hallway becoming ice cold, even during the peak of a Kentucky summer heat. Others describe feeling of being watched while walking near the service elevators. So when I visited that Seelbach Hotel myself back in 2019, I walked through many of the areas where paranormal activity is most often reported. I explored the mezzanine, the Oak Room, the Rathskeller, and the infamous 8th floor. Personally, I didn't witness anything supernatural during my visit. I didn't hear phantom footsteps, or I didn't see the Lady in Blue wandering the halls. But what stood out most to me were the conversations I had with employees working inside the hotel. One employee I spoke to openly admitted he he didn't believe in ghosts at all. He laughed off most of the stories surrounding the Lady in Blue and said he figured that, there's a logical explanation for nearly everything people had experienced there. However, he did admit there was one thing he couldn't quite explain. Every now and then, he said, he'd walk into what he described a pocket of cold air in random parts of the hotel, especially on the 8th floor. According to him, it felt unnatural, like stepping into an invisible well of freezing temperature before suddenly walking back into normal air again. He told me he never thought much about it until an amateur ghost hunter staying at the hotel. They explained that the paranormal investigators often associate sudden cold spots with spiritual activity. The employee shrugged it off the best he could and told me, I've heard all the stories, but I just haven't seen anything. The cold air is a little weird, but I'm sure there's an explanation for it. Maybe there is. Paranormal investigators have visited the Seelbach for years, hoping to document evidence of the haunted activity. Some claim to have captured EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, gotten whispers, faint cries, or responses to questions asked during investigations. Others report sudden temperature drops, like the other gentleman who worked there. Of course, skeptics argue that all hotels naturally produce strange sounds and just an eerie atmosphere. Buildings over a century, they settle, they creak, pipes groan. Elevators, they malfunction, they break down. But the Seelbach's reputation persists because the stories never seem to stop. And perhaps what makes the haunting so compelling is that Patricia Wilson wasn't some ancient legend from the 1800s. She was real. Her death was real. There are newspaper accounts. The uncertainty surrounding her final moments, that was also real. That unsolved tragedy seemed to linger in the hotel like a stain that never completely faded. Even today, the Seelbach remains one of Louisville's most iconic landmarks. It's hosted presidents, movie stars, musicians, celebrities all around the world. Elvis Presley stayed there. The Rolling Stones stayed there too. Robin Williams, that was his favorite place to stay in Louisville. And according to local legend, Patricia Wilson, she never checked out. And if you ever visit Louisville and you find yourself standing inside the Seelbach Hotel late at night, pay attention when the elevators are open. Watch the mirrors carefully. Listen to the hallways after midnight. Because if the stories are true, you may not be alone. And somewhere inside that grand old hotel, the Lady in Blue may still be wandering those halls, searching for answers nobody ever gave her. So if you want to learn more about the haunted history of Louisville, check out my book, Southern Ghost Stories Louisville. There's so much history in the Derby City. I mean, they have Waverly Hills Sanitarium, arguably the most haunted place in America, right there on the Dixie Highway. There's an old sanitarium out there on Tom Sawyer Park. There's just so many great stories in Louisville. So I'm looking forward to being up there this weekend. If you've enjoyed this episode of Southern Ghost Stories, please be sure to follow, leave a review, share it. Follow us on social media. Find Southern Ghost Stories on Facebook, Instagram. Send us comments, questions. I'm going to do a Q&A here in a few more weeks about taking questions from listeners of the show. And those are always a lot of fun. And if you ever experienced anything at the Seelbach, I want to hear about it. Drop me a line on the Facebook or Instagram pages. And don't forget, the Louisville Horror Con is this weekend at Kentucky Expo Center. It's going to be a great time. I told you guys, Jamie Kennedy, Ed Begley Jr., Linda Blair. Lots of big-name celebrities going to be there signing autographs. I'll be there slinging books, signing books, telling ghost stories. My buddy Ben from Monster City Madhouse is going to be there. He has some brand new apparel, some really cool retro Halloween horror T-shirts he's got. The Lagoon Life is really cool. He's got a new monster shirt he's rolling out. Come check us out at the Kentucky Expo Center, and we'll be there. And check back next week. We're gonna introduce a new feature in the show, and I'm really excited about it. So check back on Tuesday because the show's expanding. I'm doing some fun stuff, and I guess I'll just see you guys then. Check out the exclusive shirts from Monster City Madhouse, Gravestone, Rocktober, and Val Halloween. All that and much more at MonsterCityMadhouse.com.